The following program is brought to you in living color on NBC.
This is Bill Monroe inviting you to Meet the Press.
Meet the Press, America's press conference of the year and winner of every major award in its field, is a public affairs presentation of NBC News.
Meet the Press is brought to you by Esso. The Public Broadcasting Service presents Vibrations, a weekly one-hour program that will help fill a regular need for good music and good dance on television.
Beethoven, of course, is no longer deaf because in that world there is no disability.
For drummers, used to be you could be heard behind 4 trombones and 5 saxophones.
To find out when you can see Vibrations, check your local public television listings. We hope you'll enjoy each show.
Our guest today on Meet the Press is the Mayor of New York City, John V. Lindsay, a candidate for the Democratic presidential nomination. Mayor Lindsay, a longtime Republican, switched to the Democratic Party last August. Before becoming mayor in 1966, he served 7 years in the House of Representatives. We'll have the first questions now from Edwin Newman of NBC News.
Mayor Lindsay, as a very new member of the Democratic Party, would it not be more seemly of you to allow the nomination to go to one of the older hands who have been working in and for the party for many years?
No, I don't see it that way. After 6 years as mayor of New York City, I've seen enough to lead me to conclude that no party should be a close club. And I didn't join the Democratic Party in order to join a club. I'm delighted that the Democratic Party has chosen to open up its system and its rules so that there be a fresh air and that the people's voice will be heard.
Aren't you making a mockery of the party system? It isn't a question of it being a closed club, is it? Shouldn't there be some service to a party before a man or a woman seeks the nomination of that party?
I think the party system needs shaking up. I think both parties need shaking up pretty badly. After all, the country's in very deep trouble at the moment, in my judgment, and something's happened to it. And perhaps one of the things that's wrong that needs shaking up is the party structure and the party system and the method of choosing nominees. Fortunately, the Democratic Party it's a whole new ball game now. In 1972, they've changed the rules.
Well, if you accept that your position is at any rate unique in this election, what qualities is it that you think you have that the other Democratic candidates who've been in the party for so much longer do not have? What do you offer that they do not?
Because I think it's time that the neighborhoods and communities of the country send someone to Washington to be the president from the operating levels of where people's problems are, rather than waiting for Washington to choose up sides and send someone out to us. It hasn't been literally since Franklin Roosevelt was sent to Washington from the operating level that you've had that happen in respect of persons with a political background. And most of my public life now has been spent as mayor of New York City for 6 years. It's been a difficult and tough and trying 6 years. And I've seen enough to know that a lot of programs need developing. We've tried to do that in New York City. And I think I know something about the urban problem in the country particularly, and what needs to happen in the United States.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll be back with Meet the Press and more questions for our guest, Mayor John Lindsay. But first, this message.
Is it a motorcycle or car? Take a good look or take your chances. It's the clunker, the dangerous automobile that can kill. Often you can spot the clunker by its poisonous, polluting engine that develops more smoke than power, by its defective headlights, by its bad brakes, Allstate is determined to get the dangerous clunker off the road. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is too and recommends periodic vehicle inspection. So see to it that lights light, brakes brake, horns blow. If you'd like more information about the clunker and what people are doing to get it off the road, write the Safety Director, Allstate Insurance Company, Northbrook, Illinois. He'll send you the free booklet, Let's Make Driving a Good Thing Again.
Now back to Meet the Press, an unrehearsed press conference. Here is our moderator, Bill Monroe.
We're ready now to resume our interview on Meet the Press. Our guest is Mayor John Lindsay of New York City, who is seeking the Democratic presidential nomination. You've just met Edwin Newman of NBC News. The other questioners on our panel today are David S. Broder of the Washington Post, Nick Timish of the Los Angeles Times Syndicate, and Peter Lissagore of the Chicago Daily News. Lawrence E. Spivak, regular member of the Meet the Press panel, is on vacation. We'll continue the questions now with Mr. Broder.
Mayor Lindsay, in a speech in Boston the other day, you said, north or south, I'm going to say a bus may be the only way to integrate schools. Is it the only way?
It is one of the tools that has to be used. And first of all, if the federal court says it has to be used, that court decision has to be supported. But I believe in it as a matter of right. I also believe that it's clearly got to be thought of as a temporary measure in the United States. The larger question is the quality of all education, all primary and secondary education in the country needs a lot of help. And until you have high-quality public education and integrated housing patterns, you're going to have problems over things like busing in order to make sure that all kids get fair and equal treatment.
Does your support of busing extend to cross-district busing between city and suburbs as ordered in the Richmond decision?
It may. I don't see any reason why not. I think the real question there is the base of funding for primary and secondary education. I can see how you'd have a very severe problem in respect of differences in funding, because now the property tax is the way in which primary and secondary education is funded. But as you move towards statewide funding, as you should, and then move additionally towards more federal help for primary and secondary education, as we should have, then your boundary lines don't make that much difference. No one is suggesting that kids should spend hours on a bus. The bus is not the focus. It's what happens at the other end of the bus. What kind of education is that child getting?
What would be your position on a constitutional amendment such as President Nixon says he's studying to limit busing for the sake of racial integration?
Oh, I think it would be a tragedy for this country. What the president is suggesting here, by even looking at this, particularly on Lincoln's birthday, as he did, is that you write into the Constitution, is symbolically or in real terms, inferior education for black kids. You simply cannot do that. I think the other aspect of that outrages me is that, it's another instance of the president or one of his appointees pouring gasoline on flames that are already too hot.
Mr. Timish?
Mr. Mayor, as candidate for mayor of New York, you promised, I'm quoting here, to make it once again the Empire City of the world. Now, several months ago, a prominent New York City Democrat, Edward Kostikian, said, and I'm quoting again, "It is irresponsible for New Yorkers to mislead the American people into believing that Mayor Lindsay is capable of performing the duties of the president. Certainly his stewardship of the city gives no evidence of such capacity." That's the end of the quote. Mr. Mayor, if there's such disappointment and distrust with you for your 6-year record in New York, do you expect the American people to trust you as president?
First, Mr. Kostikian is a Tammany Hall ex-leader who I succeeded in defeating every time I ran for any office, both Congress and both times I ran for mayor. He was in the opposition party, and opposition no matter what it was, and remains in opposition. I think that my stewardship of the city for 6 years is an entirely legitimate point in this campaign, and I welcome it, in fact, because I believe that with all the problems that we have in New York City, and we have a lot of them, as the most congested city in the country and the largest, that we've made tremendous strides and we've made big net gains. We've decentralized our entire school system, introduced a system whereby every high school graduate is guaranteed a college education tuition-free. In the process of decentralizing all 18 municipal hospitals that we have. We've reformed our police department, built the 22 industrial parks for job training, and many other areas where we think we've made big gains. That's not to say that we don't have a lot of headaches, and we've had some losses too. But I think that town, given a chance and given some support from other levels of government, not only going to make it, but will continue to be the dynamic city it is.
Could you look the people in New York City in the eye right now and tell them the city's in good shape and it's in better shape than when you became mayor?
I can look them right in the eye and say that we've confronted every single serious problem that's been there head on, and we haven't shoved anything under the rug. Where there's been misery, we've confronted it. Where people haven't had a chance, we've done something about it. I remember how many angry people I had to face when I stopped construction on $200 million worth of public construction in our city, including schools and police stations, in order to force a couple of unions that refused to go along with an employment plan for minorities to come along. And we held that ground for 7 months. And finally, they came along, and it worked.
Well, does all this doomsday talk about New York City come from the scandals and the strikes and so forth? How would you explain this pervasive doomsday feeling about New York City?
I would invite you to come spend some time with us in New York, and we'll show you everything. We'll show you the good and the bad. Not too long ago, I had a series, about 26 portfolio managers of banks across the United States who buy city bonds, New York City bonds. And we took them around and we showed them all of the warts and the bruises and the scars, as well as the strong things, the site for the new convention center and the new passenger liner terminal. We're building 25% of the new office space in the whole country right in New York City. Well, we showed them everything, good and bad, in our budgets and our pressures and the money headaches that we have and narcotics and drug problems and programs. And they went back to their home cities and wrote us extraordinary letters, said we have a whole new impression of New York City. We see something about the caliber of your cabinet, which we're impressed by. We see that you're confronting the most difficult problems in the world, and in fact, you've woken us up to some problems in our backyards and our own cities that we know that we're not facing up to.
Mr. Lissagore?
Mayor Lindsay, John Gardner, who is head of the Common Cause Lobby, says that the 1972 campaign is likely to fall into the hands of professional image manipulators whose purpose will be to sell the voters what Gardner calls an illusion, to move him without thinking and to con him psychologically. Do you think the 72 campaign is going to turn on this professional image manipulation?
No, I don't. In fact, I think the 72 campaign, the only real risk that's involved is of sheer exhaustion of the public and possibly their total boredom as a result of its length, its endurance, and the number of primary states that now have to face presidential primaries. 26 of them will have new laws, and every candidate for the presidency has to be tested in the streets. He has to go to the people. All candidates for the presidency have liabilities on their shoulders, and the primary process, as wide open as it is now, is designed to test their weaknesses as well as their strengths. And I think that expensive and clumsy as the American system is, nobody can say it's anything but a very broadly based one at the present time.
You've been widely described as a kind of television candidate because of your good looks and the so-called charisma you have. Mr. Gardner says that TV spots of less than 60 minutes is a studied means of not informing the voter, and he's called upon the broadcasters not to allow anything under 5 minutes. Would you forego the 60-second TV commercial, and would you agree to 5 minutes, a minimum of 5 minutes when you appear on television?
Well, I don't know about minutes and hours. I have signed and I support those restrictions that have been put forward on money that you can spend for television and radio. I agree with that. All candidates have been asked to subscribe to that, and I join in that. I also believe that by congressional law, that television should be supplied free to all candidates for high political office based on fair formulas and for a period of time not to exceed around 6 weeks before the election. I think that's going to cut into the cost of campaigning very substantially. I also believe in the use of television. I think it's right. I think that it's pretty hard to fool people through television, generally speaking. I also believe in balanced campaigns. My own campaigns in New York City are exactly the way I'm running now for the nomination for president. Neighborhoods, communities, talking to small groups, traveling from block to block, and answering questions before all who listen.
Could I switch you abruptly, Mr. Mayor, to Vietnam and ask you, you've talked about ending that war and ending it immediately. How would you end it?
I'd end it by fixing a date for withdrawal, which would be immediate, a matter of weeks. And then meeting that date, withdrawing the troops, I'd accompany that immediately with personal initiatives by the President with the North Vietnamese on the subject of the repatriation of prisoners. I'd accompany it with aggressive moves in the United Nations on the same subjects and with the International Red Cross and with the Family of Nations. And I'd withdraw. I'd pull out.
Mr. Newman?
Hey, Lindsay, you're not talking necessarily about ending the war when you talk about that. You're talking about ending the American involvement in it.
I'm talking about stopping the killing from the American point of view. I don't think that the Thieu government, which is the reason that we continue to stay there, is worth one more drop of American blood, nor is it worth one more escalation by bombers of death and destruction on hamlets and villages in North Vietnam.
But you would concede that the United States could withdraw and the war continue.
What I think would happen would be, very quickly, would be that the Vietnamese would resolve their own destiny. I believe that they'd do it.
Well, Lindsay, you said in December that the president leapfrogging around the world with instant meetings with various heads of government was not changing the look of America to people for 1 minute. Should the president not go to China, and should he not go to the Soviet Union?
Well, I'd hope that these trips result in something, accomplish something. You have to understand the price tag for the Peking visit. It almost destroyed relationships with Japan by the way it was handled. I was in Japan shortly thereafter and examined the shock waves that took place. Obviously, it shook the Soviets very substantially. That's why the patch-up was done to arrange a trip to Moscow, too. It shook our NATO alliance in Europe because people are not sure what the United States is going to do next. It was not accompanied by consultation with friendly countries. And we all believe, I think, that may not necessarily the trip to Peking may not necessarily result in anything really concrete, and I think the president was wise in de-escalating that. But on the other hand, I think it may be important to come back with something, too.
Well, if you were president faced with the situation that existed between the United States and China, would you have gone about it in the same way?
Well, no, I think I would have gone. I would like to think I would have gone about it with some consultation with a lot of other countries. One thing I've learned as mayor of New York City is that you simply cannot just announce something and have it happen without disrupting all kinds of fairly delicate relationships. And consultation is absolutely key. You can go from A to Z with consultation, and you may lose more than you gain without it. And I don't think that surprise is a sound and good ingredient in international affairs, particularly in view of the fact that Mr. Nixon himself had helped lay the foundation for so many years for an anti-China attitude and had made it very, very difficult for persons to accept China into the UN. I happened to be one of those when I was in Congress that was advocating a China policy under which China would be in the UN. I could see nothing wrong in it. It was very difficult to do that, and one reason was because of the rhetoric that was coming forward from a lot of people, including Mr. Nixon at that time. In fact, it's in his book, Six Crises. There's enormous attack in there on the danger involved in having China come into the UN.
Mr. Broder?
Mayor Lindsay, will you follow the example of Senator McGovern and Congressman McCloskey and make public all the contributions you've received since the beginning of your campaign?
Yes, I believe in that. I think that it should be done. I believe in disclosure. I think it's right.
When we see that, will we find that some of your past Republican supporters have followed you into the Democratic Party?
Not too many. The biggest single contributions that I've received was from a New York City gala that we held, where 6,000 people came to a big affair that we put on, and we raised $300,000 from that. And there are only two other large individual contributors other than those two, and they both happen to be Republicans, J. Irwin Miller from Indiana and Arthur Houghton from New York, both Republicans. But beyond that, the campaign is currently being financed out of small contributions that are raised in the states by the local campaign teams that I've built up in the 3 states where I'm now running: Florida, Wisconsin, and Massachusetts.
I want to ask you about the subject of tax reform, which is not unrelated to campaign contributions. You said that you believe we must finally close all those loopholes that enrich the privileged and the powerful. Do you consider the capital gains tax one of those loopholes?
I think it ought to be cut down. It's now the capital gains tax now is about a 36% maximum in the extreme case. It's probably closer to about a 25 or 6% bracket now. I think that ought to be adjusted. I'm not saying abolish it, but a 5 or 10% adjustment there is not going to hurt the free exchange of capital at all. It will not discourage investment, and I think it will be fairer to the average wage earner and blue-collar worker.
What's your position on the value-added tax, which President Nixon is
I'm not
considering?
for it. I think it's a sales tax, and it's a regressive tax. You see, and I look at what's happened in the country over the past 10 years, where you've had a shrinkage in the total federal tax bite, some $50 to $60 billion downward in the total bite, whereas the local tax burden has escalated by many, many times during that period, and that's mainly all property and sales taxes. So that you've had over a period of a decade a shift, really, in the strategy on supporting public service from a progressive income tax structure towards the regressive sales and property tax.
Mr. Timish?
Mr. Mayor, you blame many of your city's troubles on what you call shortchanging by the state and federal governments. Now, I don't like to be too much of a stickler here, but the federal outlays to New York City now run to nearly $9 billion a year, and direct federal aid has increased, I believe, since you became mayor from the federal government, from $532 million to a current level of $1.6 billion. And state aid has gone from $965 million to $2.4 billion. And the administration in Albany would say that there's parity now, that New York City gets as much aid as it pays in taxes. In fact, it's a little bit shaded to the side of the city. Do you really feel that you've been shortchanged by the city and by the state?
All cities have. All cities have. And by the way, your figures aren't correct. The taxpayers of New York City send down somewheres, depending on how you measure it, somewheres in the area of $20 billion to Washington. And we receive back to support public service things of various kinds, no matter what it is, in running the government. I have to run that government, $1.5 billion. And that's a fact. That budget is, I have a $9 billion budget in New York City. It's, as you know, the second largest in the country other than the federal government itself. And 60% of that is raised locally out of our own resources.
And Mr. Mayor, you said that...
And it's absolutely true that all cities are being shortchanged. And there isn't a city in the United States that is not asked to bear all of the burdens of modern society, including the problems of the poor and poverty programs, and they're getting very little help from other sources to do this.
Since we have only about a minute and a half left, let's go on to Mr. Lissagard.
Mr. Mayor, in reacting to the statement made by the presidential aide, Mr. Haldeman, about people consciously aiding and abetting the enemy with not supporting the president's peace proposal, you said in Boston that, make no mistake about it, those were the real beliefs of Mr. Nixon. How do you know that?
Well, I think that it was supported almost immediately by the president himself when, right after Mr. Haldeman spoke, the president came forward and said fairly closely the same language, And it was a suggestion that candidates for the presidency in talking on the subject of Vietnam may cause a delay in the resolution of the Vietnam conflict. And I say that is nonsense on the merits and nonsense from the point of view of First Amendment rights. In fact, I happen to think that Mr. Nixon himself is delaying the settlement of the Vietnamese war by his continued insistence on supporting the Thieu government, which we have no business supporting.
Are you concerned, Mr. Mayor, that South Vietnam might go communist if the Americans withdraw as precipitately as you and others would like to see?
I think the Vietnamese will resolve their own destiny and should resolve their own destiny. And I think the history will show you also that the Vietnamese have thrown out of their country all foreign governments who've tried to occupy them. Japanese, French, and now the Americans.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but our time is up. Thank you, Mayor Lindsay, for being with us today on Meet the Press. I'll tell you about next week's guest in just a minute after this message.
The Army trains a man to be a soldier, and it does its job very well. But who prepares him for the big step when he gets out of the service?
It has to equal that R. But you're right, it has to equal this R.
Yeah, that's right.
This unusual school at Fort Dix is an answer to that need. These GIs, many of them fresh from Vietnam, are being prepared to go back to a useful civilian life and perhaps go on to college. The program was started by Staten Island Community College and receives support from ESSO.
Repitan después de mí.
Uno, dos, tres.
There was a half step right in the middle, and again right at the
School
end.
success has prompted more than 40 like it at other bases around the country. We hope the idea keeps marching along.
That makes sense.
For a printed copy of today's interview, send 10 cents in coin and a stamped, self-addressed envelope to Merkel Press, Box 2111, Washington, D.C. 20013.
A week from tonight, President Nixon begins his historic visit to China. And next Sunday on Meet the Press, our guests will be two of the nation's foremost authorities on Asia, Dr. John K. Fairbank and Dr. Edwin O. Reischauer of Harvard University. Now, this is Bill Monroe saying goodbye for Mayor John Lindsay and Meet the Press.
Meet the Press has been brought to you by ESSO.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.